Dreams are beautiful, and some of them should be sought after. Yet, some of those dreams can turn into nightmares, and in return, despair. You have found yourself on a weird side of YouTube, and no, this is not comic story, although why the hell am I talking like this? Still, we must go over the backstory of Shoko Toyokawa. Today, we will explore her past and explore the dreams that she was in to find out more about this princess of this city of false smiles. That was pretty good. Don't you think? Honestly, hey, if someone wants me to read some, scripts, I'm down for it. I can voice act, kinda, not really, but still, I can do some things, alright? But yeah, no doubt, we have to talk about Shoko's story, her backstory, everything, because this has been something that I've been wanting to do for a while. And no, this is not written out. This has been something I've been, pondering for, a couple of months now. And definitely, I just want to get it out because it's the new year. Why not start off right? Hopefully, your new year has been going well so far. And hopefully, things will continue to pretty much go well as much as we want it to. Now, obviously, when I come down to this story, it will be explained in the future, pretty much next episode, why we're doing the backstories now. And in that episode, you won't get the backstories because they're long. They take a while to talk about. But definitely, I want to at least set it up so at that point, we will bring up the backstories of each character. Starting off with Shoko. So let's actually get into it. Now, when it comes to Shoko was born in a city called Shusuyoko City. Basically, this city is just basically like this entire big, modern day city, but still has its own kingdom place. Basically, it's kind of like Insomnia from Final Fantasy 15 in a way, except it's all built on top of this hill, and obviously the castle is where Shoko and her parents live and essentially rule the entire city. The weird thing about this city is, though, right? The weird thing is that this city is, basically run on smiles. That's essentially what it is. It's run on smiles. It's run on that. If you have to smile a lot, it's literally a part of your life if you live in this city. No matter what, you smile. Even if it's something that necessarily doesn't go your way, you still smile. Because that's what people in this city absolutely does. That is what the king and queen expects from you, and that's what the princess looks up for, to see some smiling people. That's basically how it is. And you thinking, okay, well, that's just a weird thing, Surely it's not necessarily too crazy. No, smiling is literally a part of the economy. As crazy as that sounds, it is literally your money. It is also your social status. It is quite literally a whole bunch of things that is important. A smile is that important because what they wanted to do is make the government, well, at least the government wants people to do, is just basically make their society and their city look way more better than, it might actually be. So anytime some tourists or some outsider people might come through, or another neighboring country might come through and basically try to go into the city, this entire kingdom and stuff, then yeah, they're gonna go out their way, look at this place, and then just be like, dang, this is some friendly ass people out here. And it's all smiles. That's literally how it is. So just again, imagine a city that's just literally built on smiles. And Shoko, again, is the princess of said city. And basically she's indomitable. She believes that there is absolutely nothing too wrong with her city, that she actually is understandable, that, there is nothing that could possibly go wrong. Everything has to be all smiles all the time, and there's just positivity in every corner of this city. And even go as far as to, help out some people every now and then, even go as far as to help some old lady walk the street because she's indomitable feeling. She can do anything. Even would go as far as to, help out some people with their cats in trees and stuff. The basic superhero type of thing. Even though she doesn't really claim herself to be a superhero, but she's a superhero in the eyes of the people, basically. And that's what you got on the higher level of the city, okay? Then you got the lower level of the city, which is not really all smiles. This is the slums. This is basically Sector 7 from Final Fantasy 7. This is your poor neighboring people underneath the whole metal plate in the sky, honestly. Again, Final Fantasy 7 reference. But these are the people that's below the city and really just not in that big, rich, higher part of the city. Mainly because they know this city is not necessarily as it seems. It's not necessarily the place of all smiles as it should be. There's something corrupt going on there, and for the people that didn't want to smile about literally everything, they go out their way to just, you know, live outside the city and be treated like trash. And that's essentially it. And no one really goes down there that's really from the top. Of course, occasionally the king and queen have to go down there just to kind of make sure nothing going crazy. And, well, at least any more than it already does. But basically, it's a fight for survival down there because these people don't want to smile, because they know shady shit is happening in that city. So of course they don't necessarily want to do as they're told, and so they live in the slums. And that's where a lot of people kind of is, honestly. There's a fair good decent amount of people in the city. Like, there's a lot of people in the city, but there's also even more people in the slums area as well. Now, as I said before, the king and queen usually have to make their visits down there to make sure that, you know, nothing really crazy goes on. Make sure everybody's in line as much as possible, and nothing really kind of happens, or some type of conspiracy or anything kind of happens that could affect the higher level of the city. So essentially, they usually go down there, but essentially this time they have some business to take care of. So they let Shoko, of all people, go down there and visit the people down there. Except she's not necessarily on the major important business as her parents would be. Instead, they're gonna run a soup kitchen. They're actually running a soup kitchen to feed the people of the slums, to make the top city look like the best place to live and with the best type of people. Obviously, Shoko is leading the charge of it, and she will not let her family down. And when it comes down to things, the soup kitchen was shockingly successful. Except, a lot of people in the slums really hated Shoko. Mainly because, oh, you're all smiles, you bitch. Or basically like, you don't even know what's going on in your own damn city, don't you, girl? And all that type of statements and comments, thinking that everything is really nice. And it starts to affect Shoko in a way where she's starting to realize, this is very depressing. And even kids are like in the slums, obviously, and they don't necessarily like Shoko as much. One girl comes through like Shoko, a background NPC does, but that's about it. They don't necessarily think she's like the worst person in the world, but she definitely should, like, you know, hold her ground against her, because obviously she's from the higher level. Why would she care about someone from the slums when her family has done nothing for them? So essentially, yeah, with this build-up economy based on smiles, it's just very weird. And so when it comes down to things, it's starting to affect Shoko because she's now seeing like the slums for the first time, and not necessarily like understanding why these people ain't smiling as much as, you know, she was, which affected her in a way. So basically, some time passes after the soup kitchen incident, but that always stuck with her, especially that girl that was kind of like, she was okay with her, but at the same time she knows she can't be because obviously she's from the higher class. And so shockingly, Shoko doesn't smile as much, and she's not necessarily in a positive mood anymore. So when it comes down to things, Shoko ends up just being in this mute state. Of course, like, you know, she'll go ahead and just, you know, be smiling around her parents and everybody else. But when she's alone, she doesn't really smile anymore. She doesn't necessarily be happy anymore or feel that indomitable strength as she once does. She stopped kind of believing in herself just a little bit. And that's kind of basically how it went for a while. So, there was the anniversary of the city. The city is having its anniversary from when it was built a long time ago in this stream. So basically, they have this parade to celebrate this entire city, obviously happening in the higher levels of the city. And so, when it comes down to things, Shoko and her family are like in two separate cars, you know, just to make sure in case there is some attempts on their lives, they'll be in separate cars. So at least if one of them go and get bodied, they'll find a way to, you know, maybe try to have everybody else kind of live through and try to figure things out afterward. So that's why they ride in separate cars during the parade. And so Shoko's looking out the window, seeing all the people just smiling, and she's doing a kind of fake smile, but at the same time it's like, it is what it is. But still, she ends up telling the car to stop because she ends up seeing one girl who's not smiling at all. And basically, it's not the same girl from before, but it's a different type of girl. A girl with pink hair and black with purple kind of on one side and white and blue on the other side. In type of twin tails type of look, obviously. And so when it comes down to things, she gets out the car and halts the parade while her parents and stuff that was like ahead of her and whatever. And so she sees this girl in rags and basically not looking the greatest at all. And so she stares at her and she finds Yukari, obviously. So when it comes down to things, she's looking at her just like, you look so damn cute. Oh my gosh. And so basically, Shoko was absolutely thrilled to see someone as lively and as crazy looking as her. She never seen anyone look like that. Yeah, she might not also be smiling, and while Yukari was confused at this point, she basically went out her way to just be like, yeah, 100%, I'm going to just straight up take you in because you're just that damn cute. And Yukari was very confused by this, why she would want to do this, but really she also wanted to save Yukari from the people around her. Obviously Yukari is not smiling, and people around her likes to smile, and so if they catch wind of it, or like really point it out a lot, then there's a good chance that Yukari could get in trouble. That's also another reason why she's basically trying to, protect Yukari in a way. Trying to be like, taking the advice of, I guess, the girl that was liking her back in the slums in a way. So basically, she ends up telling Yukari to get into the limo that she was riding in during the parade, and they go ahead, get in the limo. And essentially, what that ended up doing is having Yukari being adopted into Shoko's family. And so now, she lives there with them, and even though they're not related by blood, Shoko considers each other sisters. And after time, and after they kind of learn more about each other, and kind of just, be around each other a lot more, Yukari feels the same way. And so, even though not, again, related by blood, they are sisters. And so when it comes down to things, Yukari's life ends up becoming pretty damn great. She becomes a pop idol. She becomes the city's biggest pop idol out of all the other pop idols. And essentially just do her own thing and just have fun and just be smiling now. Because that's kind of how things are. And so a long time passes afterwards, and they are just living together and everything is perfectly fine. Until randomly, for whatever reason, some months after all this passed, well, really, yeah, some months after all this passed, what ends up happening was kind of weird. So essentially, Yukari ends up, basically doing her own thing, and everybody else is doing their own thing. Shoko's walking around being happy and indomitable again because she's finally like, having like a sister or something that she could share her feelings to and everything. And so, it's nice to have something like that. But then she hears the guards kind of speaking about the slums and the people down there and how there's going to be an operation being carried out soon. She doesn't necessarily know what they're talking about or whose side of which party is carrying out some type of operation, but she doesn't necessarily have all the details and information. And anytime that she wants to bring it up to her parents, they don't necessarily listen to her, or much less they don't really necessarily care about what she's trying to say. And so what ends up happening is that she tries to tell Yukari about it, and Yukari kind of gets suspicious about Shoko's parents, about what's happening. And so essentially what's happening is, she's got to make a choice between her parents and potentially maybe something harmful that's happening to the slums. And it's kind of getting to a crazy little point, and in her mind in a way. Is this the kind of threat that we have to worry about when it comes to, the people up high dealing with the slums? Are they going to eradicate the people of the slums in a way? Yukari doesn't necessarily know, but she wants to kind of figure things out as well because she's been bothered for the slums for a good chunk of time. She wants to go back down there. She doesn't tell Yukari. She doesn't tell Shoko that, but she does definitely go back down there to do something. So anyway, so the next day ends up happening and things starts to go off the rails. So after Yukari's visit from the slums, she ended up going to Shoko's room and basically asking her for something. And so Shoko, obviously being the helpful sister that she is, she just wanted to know what she wanted. And so essentially, Yukari told her to close her eyes. And basically, she did what she was asked. And she basically warned her and tried to tell her that, we are sisters, right? You consider us sisters. I think of us as sisters as well. However, I don't necessarily feel like we can be really sisters in family together if we don't take some extreme measures. And with her eyes closed, she ended up casting a spell which allowed Shoko to take the blood inside of Shoko into Yukari and Yukari's blood into Shoko. Yes, they exchanged blood, so now they're actually like family, which is very creepy, but at the same time, it is what it is. Shoko is on some, family loving type of beat, being innocent and pure, but then Yukari is on this, no, I need your blood to be family. That's how he is. We vampires like this how. Not really. But anyway, basically she did that, taking the blood of Shoko and exchanging it with her own, and essentially, yeah, this one was kind of crazy. And so, yeah, Shoko felt all of that, and she ended up passing out from it. And after that, Yukari kind of just leaves her there in her room, and she doesn't necessarily bother her until the sun sets. And so Yukari, on her own, Shoko wakes back up in her room, and she basically goes outside, very confused and light-headed about what just happened. She doesn't necessarily know what happened. She just closed her eyes the entire time, and the blood was exchanged. And so all you hear is like the guards in front of this whole estate of where Yukari and Shoko lives. They basically hear them trying to hold back the slums because for whatever reason, really, the slums is just being really crazy. Like they're going after people from the high up spots, and it's getting weirder. Like why are they acting out now? Like, you already know the higher up people have like a military and their own army and police and all that type of stuff. Why are they attacking them now? And so essentially what happens is, basically, Shoko's hearing all this. She's about to go confront her family, her mom and dad, about what the hell is going on. And so she runs into Yukari again. And so she's just like, Yukari, do you know what the hell is going on? Like, what's with these people? And so definitely what happens is, Yukari looks away, but then she kind of basically put her hand on her stomach, and she's like, you need to be strong for what might happen next. I'm not necessarily sure what's going on completely, but you need to be safe no matter what happens. And so, essentially, Yukari just leaves without necessarily telling Shoko essentially anything, and that's because in her story, despair has gotten to her, and so she knows something is going wrong with despair, and so she has to leave off from this world to go somewhere else, which is where she'll, meet Junko and all that type of stuff, and that's where that kind of goes in to her story to where we are now. And so when it comes down to things, Shoko still is very confused. She doesn't see Yukari afterwards. She didn't teleport. Now, Yukari didn't teleport or go anywhere, when she was in sight of Shoko, obviously. She didn't even know she was a magician at that point, or a mage, or had any special type of powers and stuff. So she doesn't necessarily know. She doesn't even know, like, what's necessarily going on completely. So that's, like, one thing. Or the despair got into her. So Shoko is completely in the dark with that. So when it comes down to things, she ends up going to her mom and dad, and she's like, yo, like, mom, dad, what's going on? Why are the slums, like, attacking the higher ups? Like, is this a part of this operation thing from months ago? And so, obviously, Shoko's mom is not necessarily pleased with her daughter finding out about this. And so, Shoko's dad ended up basically locking the door behind them as she went in her room. And so, essentially grabbed Shoko by her arm, threw her on top of the bed, and, not great. So, yeah, basically, she was saying basically, Shoko's mom was pointing out, like, you say you're indomitable all the time. You say that you're happy in the city. How happy can you really get? We will find that answer out today. Don't you worry about the people of the slums. You've been looking very unhappy for a very long time. So basically, Shoko's mom ended up pinning her arms onto the bed, and then Shoko's dad getting on top of her, and it's not necessarily going to be a great thing. So essentially, she's like, Shoko's mom is basically just holding her down at this point, and she's just like, we will show you true, and we want to see how indomitable you actually really are. We must see this. We must test this. Because at the end of the day, we cannot necessarily have an unhappy child now, can we? And so, yeah, it's getting very weird. Why is this happening? I have literally no idea. And Shoko has no idea either. But the despair is definitely here. There is definitely a nightmare that's going on in this entire world. And so, before the obvious is about to happen to Shoko, the spirit ends up whispering in Shoko's ears, obviously. She ends up being like, that the spirit itself is like telling Shoko, like, you really about to let this happen? Aren't you stronger than what, your parents think of you? Aren't you supposed to be this indomitable figure and whatever? Why don't you show your actual strength? Why don't you actually get out of this situation? Or unless you want to have daddy's child, of course. There's easily ways you can get out of this situation. Doesn't necessarily matter how, just make sure you get out of it. And I can grant you that power. All you gotta do is accept it. Accept that you can actually be indomitable. Accept that you can actually get out of this situation. Can you actually do it? As the princess of Chuseoko City, you should be able to. You are next in line to the throne. You should be able to overthrow your parents if you really want to. But then again, if you don't, well, we already know what's going to happen. So what will it be, princess? What side are you going to choose? And how are you going to necessarily avoid the situation? I'm dying to find out. And so obviously, because Shoko doesn't want to get McDonald's right paid, who would, she accepted the power of despair and essentially went on a flipping rampage. So obviously she kicked off her father and basically just body pressed the hell out of her mom onto the bed and essentially just hurt the hell out of her. She went through the damn bed, the mattress is freaking broke. And so she's just angry. Shoko's just pissed. She is not smiling anymore. She's just absolutely mad as hell. She doesn't necessarily know exactly what's going on. She's not fully in control either. So that's basically what's happening here. She just pissed the hell off. And so, the dad is basically just being like, yo, what the hell is happening to you? This ain't part of the plan. And so he's just not understanding the situation here. And Shoko basically takes a chair nearby and starts wailing on her dad. Just going, and it does not effing matter. Just continuously just going in until at the point he's dead. She basically just murdered the hell out of her own father. Chair is broken up. It's basically shrapnel at this point, and just going in on that dead body. It's just getting really gross and very horrible, honestly. And so Shoko's a mom, obviously not necessarily going to escape the situation either. So she ends up trying to run away, but obviously Shoko pulls her, tries to beat her ass too, rip off her clothes and all that type of stuff to humiliate her, and then basically beat her ass to death too. That's essentially what just happens. And so Shoko still, at this point, is under the influence of despair, not necessarily effing with any of this that's happening. And obviously the guards come in, hearing that they are screaming and whatever before they die. And so basically Shoko just tanks them all. She tanks them all. Doesn't necessarily matter what they use. It did not stop Shoko at all. And she tore down the entire kingdom, the entire mansion that they were living in. Everything that has to do with anything, everything. She just basically tore down every last thing that existed within that mansion. That mansion is no freaking more. It's just a pile of actual rubble. And so what happens is, obviously the citizens and civilians end up seeing what's happening up at the mansion. The people that were fighting in the slums against the higher ups don't really fight with them anymore, strangely. And so they all go to the top of the mansion, the top of the hill of the city, to see what the hell happened to, the king and queen and stuff. What's going on with that? So essentially, Shoko is finally, spiking up with her anger and all this type of stuff. Just sitting there, blood in her hands, just covered in it and everything. And it's not a pretty sight at all. And then when the civilians actually get up there, they're just like, what the hell did you do? And so she looks at them like a ravaged, just straight up animal. And then she starts to slowly like come back down and actually become her normal self again. And she's looking scared and horrified because of what she did. She didn't know what she was doing, but she just did it anyway because of despair. And so she's just looking at civilians with this crazy eye. Oh my gosh, I wish I could animate that because that would look so cool. I actually know what that looks like. Her clothes is all ripped up and all this type of stuff. She's very horrified and all this. The civilians is not smiling anymore. They are very extremely horrified of her. She's looking at her hands and everything, just blood everywhere. It's just not a great sight. And she's like, oh my god, I just killed my parents. Oh my gosh, I just killed my sister. Because she doesn't necessarily know that, Yukari is a magic person, that she's a mage, that she basically can go anywhere she wants to. And Yukari's already been left the dream world, obviously. So it's just Shoko at this point. And so the civilians, seeing what happened to the king and queen, or thinking that Shoko is responsible for it, and even though they don't necessarily have the whole information, obviously, what's they're gonna do? They're gonna kill Shoko. So Shoko basically almost gets attacked by the civilians, and she's freaking the hell out, until the spirit ends up saving her and bringing her to a different world. And that's kind of basically how Shoko got away from that. And that dream is just gone. That dream is just completely effed. 100%. That city is just completely screwed, and it's left for them to, it's basically just left for your imagination, honestly, for how they go on from there. Now that she's been basically cast out of her own home dream, basically cast out of the dream world entirely, where does Shoko go from here? Well, she ends up waking up in a world that doesn't look like her own. It's this white looking world with all these marble white cubes everywhere, and just very weird. She stands up for a minute, looking around. She noticed that her clothes has completely changed. She's not necessarily as bloody as she once was. She still remembers what happened, and she's very depressed about it and angry at the same time. She doesn't know what voice that was that made her, go that way, but she definitely doesn't want to deal with it anymore and just wants to just have a fresh start in a way. And then that's when the despair slut comes through. She basically comes through and she's just like, well, what do we have here? And so Shoko's just like, who the hell are you? He's like, oh, you haven't heard of me? Well, then again, you just arrived here, so I'm not necessarily surprised. And then so she's just like, well, if you want answers, why don't you come with me? I can teach you things that you don't even know. And basically, that's kind of how she just ends up with Junko. So Junko basically fills her head with a whole bunch of things with despair, seeing that she is someone that is, able to manipulate it and use it to her own advantage. Junko basically kind of manipulates Shoko in her own way, basically saying that the reason why things are going wrong and why things are not necessarily going correctly is because of what's happening with Jay and how they're in the High School DxD universe. And basically, she basically tells Shoko that, Jay has to die, or at least get brought to her to basically take down the entirety of what's going on here. So with the one friendly face, supposedly, being taken in with when it comes to Shoko, she obviously figures out what she has to do, and that's when they start trying to meet up with Jay, obviously. Junko gives, Shoko a new outfit, her whole ass, rich girl looking ass outfit, and essentially makes her go on a journey to go beat up Jay or kill him, essentially. But thankfully, again, Blue was there to kind of save the day and solve the problem a little bit, so there you go. But that's basically the entire story of Shoko Toyokawa. Hopefully you did enjoy. My voice is dead, by the way, so yeah. Great start to 2023. So when it comes down to things, yeah, there is a lot I really wanted to do when it comes to story, but I'm gonna be honest, animating all that and Koikatsu, I'm not doing all that. I'm gonna be honest. You might just get a cover picture, and then the cover picture gonna just last throughout the entire video, and that's gonna be essentially it. I'm not animating all that. That's too much. And even when it comes to future stories, I'm not animating that either. Unless someone comes through and they say, I'm gonna just animate this stuff, at least the major scenes or whatever, and just, you know, make this like an actual thing, so you could just see why and how things kind of went when it comes to Shoko now. However, or like an anime studio come through and ask me if they want to animate this story, then fine. But other than that, I'm not necessarily going to do this with the animation. I'm just going to give you like a picture of something, like a Shoko, whatever, and then we'll go on from there. And that's just essentially the editing of the video, and everything else is just audio. So that's just how that's going to be. But yeah, hopefully you learned something about Shoko. You learned about her past. You learned about why she is the way she is. Shoko is not the smartest person, but she's smart enough, and definitely, while you might be able to see that, holy shit, she's actually very strong and indomitable, she is, but you gotta remember too what all that has done to her in her past. What that really has done has removed her belief that she actually is strong. She might say she's strong, she might say that she's indomitable, but does she really believe it? That's why you haven't really seen her actually been powerful. It's why Mari even beat her at that point. So, yeah, Shoko's actually a lot stronger than what you think. She just haven't really done it because of her past, and that's essentially what's holding her back. And as you will see throughout the rest of the ventures, all the girls are kind of like this in a way, whatever the cost when it comes to, you know, their past and whatever. So you will see. But yeah, that's basically the entirety of Shoko's story. So hopefully you did enjoy it. Next time we cover our story, it will be Yukari's turn, considering that they're both, you know, entwined together. So that would be an even more difficult and crazier route, which I already kind of know the story of too, so I can just record that and just have that out. But yeah, that's basically it for Shoko and why she is the way she is and how she kind of, you know, turned out to be this way in the story so far. So hopefully you did enjoy that. If you did, be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification on your way out. So also follow me on Twitter. And if you'd like to donate to the channel, Patreon is available as well. And until then, it's your boy Jay, signing off. Have a blessed day.